Good evening. We're back. I'm Pastor Brandon Gilmore from Nemo United Methodist Church in Virginia Beach, and this is my wife, Rachel Gilmore, from the gathering at Scott Memorial at United Methodist Church at Virginia Beach. And tonight we're going to talk about what healthy, holy, good sex looks like. And we want to include a trigger warning right here, a disclaimer at the very beginning, because if you've had some kind of traumatic event in your past, that has kept you from enjoying sex or connecting intimately with someone in healthy ways, then please pursue counseling to help you unpack and process that experience. We're not professionals to help you deal with that. We're not covering that tonight. We want to start off by reminding everyone that sex is a gift from God. We read in Genesis about God gifting us sex. And actually, the book of Psalms, which is actually what scholars think is the only book in the Bible written by a woman.
Song of Songs, yes.
So what did I say?
Psalms.
Song of Songs, sorry. Song of Solomon. Is about scholars think that was the only book that was written by a woman. And it's all about a story of a passionate and committed relationship. And all throughout it, we see the couple enjoying each other's bodies.
All right. Yes, it is a steamy book about the power of foreplay. So something that was hard for Brandon to understand. Oh, where's that book? The Feminine. I'm going to get it.
I'll get it. Here.
I got it. We'll see. You can tell I'm not wearing my pajamas. Okay, so there is this book called The Female Brain that was amazing for Brandon and I to read. I went through and read it and underlined things and put big exclamation points if I'm like, yes, this is me. And then he went through and read it. And when he saw a lot of my exclamation points, he put a frowny face oh no, man, seriously, that's what women are like. But this was really helpful to him because for women, sex is not something that we think about all the time, and it's not something we want all the time. So when Brandon is hoping to connect in that way, he has learned from this book that foreplay starts in the morning and is revisited throughout the day. Okay, so I'm going to read you just a few pages from this. It is so good. Okay. So it says female sexual turn-on begins, ironically, with a brain turn off. The impulses can rush to the pleasure centers and trigger an orgasm only if the amygdala, the fear and anxiety center of the brain, has been deactivated. Ladies, we have to shut down permanently a part of our brain to
and
truly enjoy it.
And there's no switch, guys.
No switch. So before the amygdala has been turned off, any last minute worry about work, about the kids, about schedules, about getting dinner on the table can interrupt the march towards orgasm. So that can account for why it takes, on average, women 3 to 10 times longer than men to reach an orgasm. So moving on to page 81, it says bad breath, too much slobber, a clumsy move with a knee, a hand, or a mouth. Any little thing can spring the female amygdala back into action, cutting sexual interest off at the pass. And one last section, I just love this one. Okay, it says, yay, I love it. When it comes to the brain, size does make a difference in the way men and women think about, respond to, and experience sex. Men quite literally have sex on their minds more than women do. They have double the brain space and processing power devoted to sex as females. Just as women have an 8-lane superhighway for processing emotion, while men have a small country road. Men have O'Hare Airport as a hub for processing thoughts about sex, whereas women have the airfield nearby that lands small and private planes. So that probably explains why 85% of 20 to 30-year-old males think about sex many times a day, and women think about it once a day, or up to 3 or 4 times on their most fertile days. This makes for interesting interactions between the sexes. Guys have to talk women into having it. It's not the first thing on their minds. Okay.
Science like this helped me learn, and some things like foreplay isn't just if I started in the morning in the kitchen by making breakfast, I'll be happy at night when the kids go to bed. Mm-hmm. Sometimes foreplay lasts 2 to 3 days. And the most powerful foreplay is the kissing, hugging, nurturing words, and I do not expect it will lead to sex. Just hoping it will. Just just being nice all the time and kissing and hugging with no expectations that they'll be fulfilled. But all of that has to be done on a consistent basis, day in and day out. I've learned that foreplay is cumulative, cumulative effect. And there are times when she doesn't want it, but because she feels nurtured and loved, Rachel is open to it. The one thing I know about Rachel is that she loves back rubs. And I hate back rubs. But if I want to have a healthy sex life to the woman I've chosen to love, I need to do the things that she loves. There's a book called The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman that's an essential read for all couples and helps you to figure out the best way to engage in foreplay and beyond that. The best way to communicate your love to your spouse is what the book is all about, how he or she will receive that communication and that love. So there might be things that don't communicate love to me, but I do them because it's my job to learn how to speak her love language, and that leads to more intimacy. Because I know that according to a study published in Social Psychology and Personality Science, which surveyed over 30,000 Americans over 40 years for 3 different projects, the happiest couples have sex once a week. My personal preference is 2 to 4 times a week, but that's what the scientists say. If you get it more than once a week, then you're not statistically any happier. And if you get it less than once a week, you are less happy. Now, there are seasons like after you've had a child or when someone's sick or out of town, and that's fine and good to give space. But to be open to doubling up or being more active in other weeks if you want to connect more when you can.
So maybe it's because we both work full time and have crazy schedules, or because my husband grew up doing a lot of chores because his mom worked full time and was out of the house. Or perhaps because my husband is OCD, and even if he knew I was upstairs waiting in bed for him, he would have this compulsion to get the dishwasher scheduled to run after bedtime so the kids can unload it first thing in the morning. But I think we do have a lot more sex because we split housework, and that alleviates a lot of the stress and helps me shut off the to-do list, that amygdala in my brain, so I'm more open to intimacy. And Brandon is not the only one that has to engage in foreplay, right? So both people in a relationship need to be mindful of it. I make sure to know what his love language is, which is words of affirmation. So I build him up. I let him know when he's being a hot and sexy pastor or dad or Duke fan. Did you see that game this week? And the things, I like to tell him about the things he does that I deeply respect. He doesn't like back rubs at all, but he does love it when his hard work is seen and appreciated, especially when it comes to his hobby of woodworking, his ability to fix things or remodel the house.
Rachel and I, we've actually hit a really good groove in our marriage in the last 5 or 6 years, and where we don't fight as much. I mean, we do fight and we do argue, like tonight at dinner about filling up my cup too slowly. We get upset with each other, but one of the things that's happened is we're secure in who we are. And we don't have to prove ourselves in marriage, or have to prove ourselves in being a parent, or have to prove ourselves in our profession, where we're very comfortable and secure in all of those areas. So what that's done, that's given us the freedom to look at each other's strengths and to point them out and encourage each other, because we realize that no matter how much we want to change the things in the other person, it's just not going to happen. When I first met Rachel, I was drawn to her because she knew how to take charge. Believe it or not, she was a leader, and she was strong, and I loved it, and it was sexy. It didn't scare me to be attracted to a strong woman who could take charge. But when that strong personality started invading my workspace, and those opinions kept rolling, it could really push my buttons, even 19 years after meeting her.
Similarly, I loved how Brandon was like this good old country boy. It was the first kind of country boy. Being a Navy brat, you don't really meet people from the hills, you meet people by the ocean. So he was trustworthy, strong, like a salt of the earth, reliable kind of guy. That was sexy to me. He was never a doormat. He knew how to bring out my strength in good ways without rolling over or giving up. But sometimes other aspects of his upbringing, like roughhousing with the kids or teasing or picking on people, really gets on my nerves. So actually, when we were dating, because see, when you marry someone, you can't expect to change. So I sat him down and I read scriptures about the power of positive affirmation. And I saw a huge difference between the amount of picking that he experienced growing up and how he really gives our son a noogie from time to time, or has Nerf gun wars and talks smack with our 7-year-old daughter. I've learned that it is not my place to change that in him, because it's not really causing harm to me or to others in any way. And I let it go most days. Most days I let it go. And Brandon makes sure to only play dodgeball tag inside of the house when I'm at work and not there to yell at him and the kids.
It's those moments where I say, don't tell your mom.
And they always tell, don't keep secrets from mommy. Go back. So, yes. That has helped us and helped our relationship together. So if you are wanting to have or are waiting to have great sex with your spouse until they are exactly the person you want them to be, then your private parts will shrivel up and die before your needs are met. I can guarantee it.
When you choose, it's amazing. When you choose to live into your marriage vows, when you daily choose to love, honor, respect, and sickness and health, and good times and bad times, until death do you part, you become one body and soul, and it cements your marriage together. And that's when you have the greatest passion and the greatest sex. Song of Songs, chapter 2, verses 3 and 4 says, with great delight I sat in his shadow, and his fruit was sweet to my taste. He brought me to the banqueting house, and his intention toward me was love. When you knew that the person you are with loves you and is safe to delight in, you can have more delightful times together. Also, Song of Songs 6, 2-3 says, my beloved has gone down to his garden, to the beds of spices, to pasture his flock in the gardens, and to gather lilies. I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine. He pastures his flock among the lilies. Gathering lilies is a passionate act, my friend.
Yes. So I figured our hottest encounters would be on our honeymoon. But like Amanda Whitney just said, I totally agree, Amanda. It's now, right? After 16 years of marriage, after our bodies have changed with middle age and children and stress of life, that we have the best intimacy, because I'm more vulnerable. I've grown in my ability to trust this man that has stood beside me in good times and in bad. It's also important to remember, if you have young children, my favorite resource for all things marriage related is Dr. John Gottman. He's phenomenal. And he has 2 books. One is called And Baby Makes 3, where he talks about, if you have young kids, it's those first couple years after the kids are born that add the most stress on a marriage. Yes, the child is precious. You love this life, but you are exhausted. Everything else changes too. It can be really hard. And he has another book called The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work that everyone needs to read when you're done reading this female brain book. Best books I've ever read.
Yep. Continuing to build your marriage in the tough times is when you develop perseverance. But if a significant amount of time goes by and you realize at any age that you aren't having regular sex because of a low sex drive, see a doctor to see if there's a medical reason for the struggle in your sex life. Now, this might apply more to women, but don't force yourself to have sex with your spouse where you might feel abused or even raped. But if you can get to the point to be open to having sex, that's a good goal to work towards.
Yeah, so something that I encourage folks to do if they are healthy and have a healthy sex drive, but are almost always the ones responding to that invitation to be intimate, turn the tables and you be the one to initiate sex so that you feel like you have more control as to the time and the way that you connect with your spouse. It can be kind of fun to go out and buy something new to try in the bedroom, see what the response is. Ladies, I've never been disappointed with his response to new pajamas. So, but I have had folks, we're going to stop there. Don't you talk about that. I have had folks ask me, how kinky can I get in the bedroom? So that was a question that kind of came in before we started the webinar. So, being married is step one, because God's plan for all of us, is to have sex with a spouse because of its power to glue us together and help us connect. So the only condition is that both of you in the bedroom are 100% okay with whatever you're trying, as long as it doesn't leave bruises or get so physical that it's not about the loving connection, but about some form of dominance or power struggle. That's not what sex is about.
Yeah. Before we take questions, we want to speak to a culture that actually Rachel and I came out of a few decades ago, and that's perhaps still popular today. And it's the purity culture, where you had purity rings and this insane pressure to save sex for marriage, and wait for that one magical soulmate to all of a sudden show up in front of your door because you kissed dating goodbye. What this resulted in is the lack of getting to know somebody through the dating process, time with the opposite sex, because Lord forbid you fall into lust and commit this sin. And the reason you get married is to have sex as soon as possible. It's not about building a life with this person.
Mm-hmm. And I feel the purity culture was especially harsh on women, right? Because we were given these horrible metaphors. I don't know about you, so ladies, chime in if you've ever heard this, where, oh, you are a cookie, and if you give your bits of your cookie away to all the guys, then your spouse will only get crumbs. And he's waiting for his dessert and he'll be left hungry. Or I was watching the Elizabeth Smart documentary on Lifetime, her story. And on it, she spoke personally and said that one of the reasons that she didn't rush to leave when she was kidnapped and raped multiple times a day for months was that she'd heard growing up, if you weren't a virgin any longer, you were like a piece of chewed up gum. And who wants chewed up gum? So I watched that Amazon Prime documentary. You guys should watch it. And I Kissed Dating Goodbye, where Joshua Harris at one point actually does apologize for the damage that his book did. And there's this scene where he and Deborah Hirsch talk about the damage done when you're a virgin and you have sex. It's not like you say, oh, I messed up and I sinned, and you move on. Like your title changes, right? Like you are no longer a virgin, and people feel like their identity is gone. And there's this huge stigma and a lack of grace attached to something that already has a deep personal effect on folks. So I know that Brandon and I said save sex for marriage. And we know that because scripture says that. And we've seen how powerfully bonded you feel towards those you're intimate with. But we are acutely aware that the latest research that I could find anyways was from a 2007 public health report, which said by age 20, 77% of us have had sex, premarital sex, okay? And there are not many 40-year-old virgins, which probably made it a really great comedy, because by 44 years old, 95% of all respondents said they had had premarital sex. So if you are intimate with someone outside of marriage, you're not alone. So there's hope for you. There's a future of really great sex ahead of you. But the greatest sex comes when it's both an emotional, physical, and spiritual connection. It doesn't happen with a one-night stand. It happens with that vow of commitment, the promise of a relationship that comes in the covenant of marriage. But if you're not a virgin, you are not a cookie crumb. You are not a chewed up piece of gum. You have sacred worth. You are loved. You are forgiven. You are precious to God. One of my favorite verses about God's forgiveness comes from Micah 7:19-20, which says, this is from the Message version. It says, where is the God who can compare with you, wiping the slate clean of guilt, turning a blind eye, a deaf ear to the past sins of your purged and precious people. You don't nurse your anger and don't stay angry long, for mercy is your specialty. That's what you love most, and compassion is on its way to us. You'll stamp out our wrongdoing. You'll sink our sins to the bottom of the ocean.
All right. Well, now we have about 10 minutes left, and we want to start taking questions, and we're going to see.
No questions yet. We forgot to remind you guys to ask questions.
Yeah. And if you're turning on Facebook Live or YouTube channel, we're looking at Crowdcast. So next week, log into there. That's where you can ask the questions and interact with people. We know it's live fed on both of our Facebook pages and our Nemo's YouTube page. So Yeah, next week, please tune in to this Crowdcast.
Yeah. Hopefully we don't have a lot of questions because everyone's busy practicing what we've preached, right? And you're enjoying your Valentine's Day together. So
probably rubbing backs or
learning each other's love languages.
All right, guys, I'm just going to give you this statistic here that I remember reading is that the men who do dishes, they have 60% more sex than men who don't do dishes.
Without being asked, just see the dishes, just do something, right? Step up, help out.
Yeah, people make fun of me for doing laundry and dishes and cooking. And I just go, you know what? I've got a good sex life, and I know that's what's helping out with that. So I'm doing the dishes, but I am OCD and.
Yeah, I happen to marry a neat freak, so that's good too.
Yeah,
it works out well for us. But thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. Next week, we are doing a special session because the United Methodist Church will have something called General Conference where we will be discussing our position on certain aspects of homosexuality. So right now, the United Methodist Book of Discipline states everybody has sacred worth. Anyone in the LGBTQIA community is welcome to come to church and be engaged with the faith community. You know, God loves us. Jesus died for all of us. We are all in need of God's grace. And so what they're looking at specifically are two issues relating to same-sex weddings, whether or not they will be held in churches and performed by United Methodist clergy, and also looking at whether or not they will ordain self-avowed practicing homosexuals. So we are going to come to you live next Thursday night. Make sure to send in any questions that you have. If you send them in ahead of time, then we can make sure that we're answering them as we discuss the three options that are going to be voted on and just update you on what's going on.
Yeah, and as we are doing this live broadcast next week, they'll be preparing to start the general conference on the way forward. And so we both have had town hall meetings in our churches to explain what's going on. Right now, the United Methodist Church, we're not allowed, Rachel and I, as United Methodist pastors, to preside and perform over same-sex marriages in our churches or anywhere. That's a chargeable offense. And right now, the Book of Discipline does not allow practicing self-avowed homosexuals to be ordained. And so we are going to see if we're going to make a change to our Book of Discipline as United Methodists or how that's going to go. And we just invite you all to be in prayer for all United Methodists in this because we don't all agree on what is the best thing. And we all don't agree with what's the most faithful thing that God is calling us to do. So we know that this is going to cause people to leave no matter what is decided or not decided. So just please be in prayer for all of our brothers and sisters in Christ and in this general conference.
Great. And I'm hoping, you stick it out. If you're part of a Methodist church and your pastor hasn't brought it up yet, ask him or her what's going on and what's happening and how it might affect your local congregation. A beauty of the Methodist Church is that when you look at United Methodist right now in the U.S., the Bushes and the Clintons are United Methodists. If you look at the state of Virginia and Methodism here, Comey and Jeff Sessions are both Methodists. So it runs the gamut in terms of belief. And I think there's beauty in living in that tension. Anyone that has been married knows that when you marry someone who is not exactly like you, which is very pronounced in our case, that you learn and grow and become better people when you understand and learn to love each other even more, despite and because of your differences. So have a great night, guys.
Never have grown in my knowledge and experience if I didn't leave the hills with the people I loved, grew up with, didn't really want to, but God called me out. And I realized just engaging different beliefs and different cultures and different ways of living. They were really strange in the beginning, but now there's just this beauty of seeing diversity. So,
yay. So thank you guys. Thanks for the positive feedback, Amanda, Tim, Brianna. You guys have a great night and we will see you next week.
See you next week. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Let's go rub your back, baby.
Oh, no. You're so...